do you think, Millie Mae? Tell me. Is your name Caroline? I don't think so. Millie Mae, what is your name?
Welcome to Millie's Gun Safe. Hey, Millie Mae. Welcome back to Millie's Gun Safe. Today we have a very interesting / tough topic to go over, and that is toxic people. And so we are going to kind of dive into this, break it down for you, and hopefully this will be a great benefit to you as you grow up and you serve the Lord.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most valuable studies that we could lead you to. We were led to it through a kind of challenging, difficult time in our walk as a couple and a family. And the Lord was just so good through a very challenging time, and He led us to this study. It's a 6-week study called When to Walk Away by Gary Thomas. And anytime that you can fringe a book or a study like this, you know that it is a good thing. And he's written many books, he claims, but he said that this one is one that he has more scripture in this study to back up these ideas, these concepts, and these guidances. And it's pretty tremendous. I feel like, for some reason, I always feel like I want to align a kind of a curriculum for church leaders, Sunday school leaders, because I wish that before we were led to lead others, that we would have had training like this. It would have benefited us so much. But that's looking backwards, and I can look at the present, and I can find value in this and a need for it.
And actually, this is the book, Gary Thomas, When to Walk Away, Finding Freedom from Toxic People. And one day during my prep, it was the end of the day, and I was online, and I was finishing up some stuff, and I just was really in need of a word. We were going through some hard times with church family and the ending of some stuff. And a local church here, actually in Bentonville, had brought in Gary Thomas, and I began to listen to their pastor, and he led us to this, and it was like the Lord said, this is what's happening, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is, how to deal with it, and then how to walk away from it. And I could not even believe the information that I was listening to and that I was hearing. And it just goes to show, as we talk through this is the goodness of the Lord, that He would help us through anything, Millie Mae. It does not matter. Good times, bad times, like there's something in His Word that He can lead us to set us free. And so this is very exciting for us. This is months in the process of studying through this and working through this. We get to share it today with you about the toxic people, but it doesn't have to be from a place of bitterness or of shame or sadness. The Lord has really allowed us to step back and to see what was happening, and to be able to see His fingerprints through it.
Yeah, hopefully this video is real beneficial to you, but it is not going to be a substitute for you actually going through the study.
Yeah.
And it's great that we have this information. Let's say you come across a person that is toxic, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, this is what Mom and Dad talked about, and you know where to go. And you go to this study. So the video is not a substitute for the study. The study is not a substitute for God's Word itself. But it sure is a great tool to help you out. It's kind of weird. It might sound weird, us talking about toxic people and putting that kind of label on it. And some people would say, well, that's not very Christian of you to categorize people and give labels. And let me tell you something. Labels are a good thing. For example, non-venomous versus venomous snakes. I think you would like to know the difference. To me, I can't stand any snake, but definitely the ones that are more harmful. So this is kind of what this is going to be about. And the label of, difficult people versus toxic people. Here's a key statement that I want to just kind of bookend the entire video. This one has been so helpful for me in the past and currently. All right. And so the statement is that Christians need to stop worrying about an unhealthy fallout with unhealthy people by a healthy decision.
Ooh, say that again.
Christians need to stop worrying about the unhealthy fallout with an unhealthy person when we're challenged to make a healthy decision. Yeah. One of the quotes from the book is like, I can't control a toxic person. I can't change a toxic person. I can't even understand a toxic person. But what I can do is I can guard my mission and maintain my character. And that is the most important thing to do.
So
But then there's, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Like, this is something that you could probably go off on, this messianic complex. It's discussed in the book.
Yeah, I so quickly want to jump ahead and be like, let's talk about what the toxic person is. We're going to get to that and the difference between a difficult person and a toxic person. So we're going to lead up to that. But the messianic complex that Gary Thomas really talks about is very familiar to all of us. If you were raised in the church or you've been a believer any time, doesn't matter if you accepted Christ at a younger age, but we're kind of taught, I would say a lot of us that were raised in the church from little bitty is that, you turn the other cheek, love them anyway. If you pray more, let's get filled with the Spirit more.
Hate the sin, not the sinner.
Hate the sin, not the sinner. And there's a lot that's put on us. If I am prayed up and confessed up that I'm going to be able to meet that person, no matter their health, I can meet them and I can help walk them to Jesus. And a lot of times, if the person's not toxic, that is all very true, Millie Mae. The Lord can use me in these situations. And I do have a responsibility to be with Him, to grow in Him, to allow myself to be filled with the Spirit so that I can produce fruits. But when it comes to the unhealthy, toxic people, and again, we're going to talk about that in a second, I cannot save them. There is nothing, when we list out their characteristics, there is nothing that I can do that would lead them otherwise, okay? And it's a very interesting study, and it's hard to really grasp our minds around, but most of us as believers will walk away from a relationship, or we won't walk away, we'll hang on to it tightly, or we might be completely killed by it, whether in our job or our ministry. And we will say, what did I do wrong? Did I not hear the Lord correctly? Was there sin in my life that I did not confess? How did I mess up this relationship? And the messianic complex is to think that I ultimately did something wrong to save them when only Jesus can do that. Okay. And we're not just talking about those that are the lost. We're talking about there's Christians that we're with all the time that are also toxic. But I cannot ultimately save them, change them, and make them less toxic.
Yeah. And so, like, you could have someone point the finger at you pretty quickly, and like, if you walk away from somebody, that's not very Christian
Christ-like,
of you.
yeah.
And that's the interesting thing about this study. And again, you have to go through the study to get the full picture. But he gives 41 accounts of Jesus walking away from people. And granted, he says that some of those kind of double up or overlap. But he talks of over 24 times that Jesus walks away from the people. And so we're gonna touch on that a little bit more later also, but right now we just need to kind of figure out what does this toxic person look like?
Yeah. Gosh, and right off the bat, there are several key things, and you want to pay attention, because as we say these, Millie Mae, there's going to be people in your life, and you're going to go, yes, 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 or you're going to go, no, 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 they're just difficult people. Some of the main flags that come up when you're dealing with a toxic person is that they have a murderous tongue, a murderous spirit. They are not just out to hurt your feelings, they're out to end you. So seems dramatic, But if you are having, it's your ministry, it could be in your workplace, whatever it is that they can really see the Lord moving, they want it to stop. Okay.
So what does a murderous tongue look like? What do you mean?
A murderous tongue is they want death. So their ultimate picture is they want to control you. So they want you to only do what they want to do. They do not care if the Lord has called you to something else. So their murderous tongue will be backbiting, lying, creating all kinds of stories. They will begin to do things like gaslighting to make it look like you're crazy to everybody else that's around, and when they're really the crazy one. They want people in authority to turn from you, so they will begin to be a whisperer. Whether that's, again, it could be in your own family, it could be in your job, and it could also be very much it's in the church. And they begin the whispering of things that you're doing. Most likely, it's made up. They live in a fantasy world, and so they are creating these things that are happening. But because they are usually very likable people on the outside, and sometimes even sweet, okay, they become this sort of attractive thing to people, and people begin to listen to them, and they begin to slowly murder your character and your effect. And then they also really murder your peace because you can't sleep at night.
Yeah. It's the reputation and character is kind of where they start working with the murderous tongue.
Yeah.
And then, but the end goal is to shut down whatever dream you have or mission that you have, whatever you're working on, whatever is proving to be effective for the kingdom. They're going to try to take it out.
And what's crazy about this is they usually follow sort of the same the same patterns, because like I said before, Millie Mae, they'll have some sort of something that's charismatic about them. And they come in, they kind of sweep in, and they want to know everything about you. They want to be involved completely. And it's kind of like over the top. And as Christians, we're like, oh, wow, this new person, this is so exciting. They're really hungry to learn. They want to be discipled. They want to serve. This is so exciting. And it quickly turns, south. And so it can be deceiving at the very beginning, but you'll sort of begin to see a little bit of some red flags, some stories from their past that just sort of don't, add up to you. And if you're not on guard, you'll quickly become part of their next target.
Yeah, the interesting thing, one major difference between just dealing with a difficult person versus a toxic is kind of like when you're seeing these big shifts or turn in their behaviors, their conversations, but a lot of that stems from the guilt, and the guilt they point at you for the cause of. They don't know how to handle the conviction of the Holy Spirit is what the truth is, and so they get eaten up by this guilt, and they don't know how. They refuse to repent, I guess, and then they don't know how to handle the conviction at that time, so they've got to take that energy and kind of project that onto something, and it's usually the ones that they enlist for help in the first place, but they're out to get you, man. They will crush your confidence. They'll crush your confidence in yourself. They will break down the confidence that you have in what God's doing. I mean, it is definitely the work of evil, it seems like, and they become a tool for that purpose.
And underlining, it is all pride. And so, Millie, when we tell you about this, we're not just talking about that natural man. As a believer, we talked about the worldly Christian with both of those doors open, and Satan and the spirit and that tug of war that is created. And so again, as that sin, the longer we go without talking to the Lord, confessing, the harder our hearts become, and like we said in our other video, they still get heaven, but their spirit gets duller and duller. Okay. And that cross starts to be filled up. The big eye begins to be filled up with just the things of the world. And pride is their thing. They want to control you. And that is what is so hard, is that they sneak in, and then they want what you think that they love about what you can offer them, how you can disciple them, and how you spend your time loving on them and praying for them in honesty. They just want to take it all, and then they want to throw it down the drain, because they want you to ultimately serve them. Control is what sets the toxic person apart. Okay, so that's the key.
Even though they know that what is being done is for the good, even though they know that obedience to the commands are just an obvious part of whatever we're doing here, they don't care. They can't care. They will not allow themselves to care, and they will try to shut that down.
Yeah.
Let me just read this part from the study that he says, "Then there are the toxic people. They are killers. Joy wilts in their presence. They delight in seeing our dreams die and our confidence crushed. Toxic people are dangerous and must be avoided or removed from our lives. We can't help or fix these people because they refuse to change and actually seem to enjoy causing harm to others." And it's so true. And the crazy thing, this is when you know you're dealing with a toxic person. They don't let go. They will not let go. You think that, oh, okay, that was taken care of. Nope. They're just sitting there in their space, and they are formulating a plan, a continual plan to stop and take down what you're doing.
And what Satan, this is so clever of him, because especially in the area of church, is we will continue, they're plotting to shut down the ministry, and we will go and feed into them more. Because remember that messianic complex, I need to just be more patient. I need to be more loving. I need to open up more time to spend with them. And we will go over above what we need to do, spending all this time and energy into this person that is still just going to continue to try to murder our spirit and end the ministry. And so in the book, he talks about how that is Satan so clever, because what it does is, if this is the way and I'm following the Lord and my eyes are on him, when I get tangled up in a toxic person, okay, then I turn my eyes off of the Lord. And now I'm funneling all of the things that the Lord is doing in me, I'm funneling it right into them, which is basically just the gutter. And so I'm no longer on the path to serve the Lord. I'm now completely serving them. Okay, and they're serving evil. And so it is very clever how he has allowed the goodness of us, because we belong to Jesus. So we have all the fruits of the Spirit. Okay, we have love, we have joy, we have gentleness, we have all those things. And he has exploited it. Okay, he's exploited it. So then we come back and we take on the guilt, and we've never done anything wrong. It is tricky. And to me, it's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. Other characteristics of these people is, the constant lies. They even make threats. They gossip. And then the worst part is they enlist others. It's like when you get, the only thing more damaging than one toxic person is two. Or when they've recruited others and there's this kind of gang mentality, and they're putting their heads together to create even greater lies and greater threats and things like that. I mean, it's amazing what they are capable of doing.
They weasel their way in. So Millie Mae, when you're in this situation, from what we have learned, and then also basically what we've read in this book and in this study, is they get in, and a lot of them will try to get information on you, and you're discipling them, but basically they just want your deep, dark demon stories, blah, 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 blah. And so they kind of weasel their way in. And when it talks about making threats, they want to turn some of that stuff in. And usually there's nothing for them to take back and to share with people, but they want to create that. They want want to say, I'm going to say this, I'm going to tell this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go higher up. And, and we're like, as believers, we love people, and how can you do this to me? I've given you all this time, and you want to turn and make it look like I did something wrong, that it was dirty. Like us praying for you and opening our home to you was somehow bad. But that's how the toxic person works. They play the religious card. They gather the people, and it is under the fact that they turn it as though you're under like great sin, that somehow you are living a great lie, and they want to end your testimony. And that's probably the most hurtful, because you will spend so much time when you are ministering to people being as transparent as you can be, giving your testimony, sharing the things you're struggling with, so that you can create a safe space, and they will take that and they will use that against you. They place shame on others. Everything they say is evil. They try to intimidate you. They pretend to be your friend. They distract others from what God's doing in them. And again, they make many threats. And that's really a massive sign of, the threats are just to control you. If they can shut us up, if they can get us to stop serving people, if they can get us to leave, if they can get us to stop leading something, then they feel like they've won.
Yeah. And the piety is kind of their friend in all of this.
Yeah.
It's like that's the struggle. That's the guilt I was talking about. It's like they know that they should, and they can't handle themselves or the idea of it, and the guilt of it all just makes them lash out, and they will try to take you down. They'll try to destroy that mission. Like we said, they'll deflate your enthusiasm. They'll make you absolutely crazy. I mean, you will lose sleep over these individuals in your life, and they'll try to make you feel guilty. They'll try to make you feel shameful or discouraged, and it is that gaslighting thing. I mean, it really is a moment in which you feel like, man, am I messed up?
How could I have gotten entangled with somebody, and I was so pure of heart? And the gaslighting means that they make you question your motives, the reality, and the sanity. And they use this. They're very good at this. I mean, they've practiced it. Most toxic people, we learned, have been toxic for years. So this is not something they just randomly picked up. Okay. They've been toxic for years, and so they're very well versed in taking everything that was ever said or done and flipping it. And you really begin to think, gosh, Lord, did I not hear you? I'm pretty sure you wanted me to serve them. And did I do that wrong? Was that wrong that I loved them? It all becomes a question. And it's kind of like when you find out somebody, anyway, anything that you found out, whether it's an affair or your friend back behind your back talked about you, it's all like, what happened? You go back through and you're like, what did I do wrong? But I'm pretty sure what was fake, what was real, and you begin to question everything. And the worst part of it all is you think, gosh, Lord, maybe you can't use me. Was I wrong in this? And they love that. They love for you to doubt the ministry. Remember, that's the point, to take our eyes off the Lord and to put it down on them. They want to be your idol. They rejoice in being your idol. They rejoice in you losing sleep. They rejoice in making you look like a fool in front of people. And the whole time it is take away. Remember, the gospel is offensive to them. Okay. So they don't want to be free. They don't want Jesus. They don't want you to want Jesus. They want you to serve them.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to feel like you lose.
Yeah.
I mean, it really can. I mean, and sometimes you do. You lose. You might lose your small group. You might lose friends. You might lose family members, And the great thing is that the Lord knows. I mean, it is so amazing. And He's even guided me to the scripture from this study. In Luke chapter 4, it talks about when he's at went back home to Nazareth, amongst his people, and he's sitting there reading from Isaiah and preaching, and then the people start to question what he's talking about. They get enraged, and they drive him out of the city. This group mentality, driving him out of the city. They're taking him to the edge of the hill that the city is built on, and they are going to throw Jesus off of the cliff. And what does it say he does? He went on his way. And that one stuck out to me. Even this morning in my quiet time, it was like he went on his way. And he didn't go on with the toxic person's way. He didn't go on with the crowd's way, the multitudes. He went right through the crowd and he went on his way. Continued on. The next part of the chapter, it talks about Jesus teaches the people. I mean, mission-minded. One interesting thing from the study was, between the difficult people and the toxic people, he said that every toxic person is a difficult person, but not every difficult person is a toxic,
And that's huge to think about because, again, the murderous spirit, and you may have seen them do it to someone else, or maybe have been done to you, and then the controlling things. Gary Thomas really talks about the difficult person. They're just irritating. They're in your personal space. It's just like, it may be like a personality conflict. That's
they don't
all.
know boundaries.
Yeah, that's always going to be, they just get on your nerves, and that's always going to be around. But remember, the toxic person, they want to control you. And listen, Gary talks about a lot how we're all going to have a toxic moment. He shared with like a parent that sees that their child is becoming addicted to a substance. And so they're now going to kind of hyper control, move them, remove friends. They're going to kind of try to help the situation because they're trying to protect their child. That's different. The toxic person, remember, they do not stop. They go from person to person. They are so miserable in themselves, and they really want everyone else to equally be miserable. Yeah. They do not hang around long. They come in quick, they explode, and then they leave you completely destroyed.
Yeah.
To the point that sometimes it's hard to pray. It's hard to hear the Lord because they've left you in pieces.
Whether the person is difficult or toxic, you'll find out. I say guilt. Watching them handle guilt is one indicator, but also watching them handle boundaries. If you're dealing with a difficult person at work, you establish a boundary, and if they work within that boundary, you're just dealing with a difficult person, right? But if that establishment of the boundary turns them into a hater and then they go next level, you're dealing with a toxic. And what do you do with a toxic? You walk away. Satan loves to use these people. It is probably, Gary Thomas says, one of Satan's more compelling attack on God's people. And by serving a toxic person, you might be offending God in the process.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. If you're serving a toxic person, you might be offending God in the process.
I wanted to read something because I know we've kind of already said a little bit about the clever attacks, Millie, but it said one of the cleverest attacks against God's church today centers around our guilt in dealing with toxic people. Satan knows he can't stop God's people, from loving and caring. So see, we talked about that fruit of the Spirit that we have, because God's Spirit makes us love and care. What he can do, however, is urge us to pour the most of our God-breathed love, intention, and goodwill on people who actually resent it, okay, and who will never respond to grace. Satan can't stop God's clear water from flowing through us, but he can tempt us to pour it straight into the gutter, quenching the thirst of no one and creating no fruit. This trap needs to be exposed, and God's people need to be set free. Nobody wants to label somebody toxic, but if God has called you, Millie, to do something, like he has called your dad and I to do something, no matter what, we have to make the choice that we have to walk away. We have to choose the Lord over this person. You know what? They may be toxic for us, but they may not be toxic for somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody else may come along and they're able to serve them and lead them and help them grow. But if the Lord reveals that they're toxic, you better listen.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you overcome dealing with a toxic person? And that's the great thing about this study. I mean, it brings you right back into focus, you know. And when dealing with a toxic person, you know, this moment happened, and there are two different ways.
Oops.
Two different ways to, you know, look at that moment. And the interesting thing is, like when we take a photo with our phones, you can edit that moment, right? And you can edit that. A toxic person will take that and turn that beautiful moment or whatever that moment was and edit it to their benefit to make you look bad. That's a part of that reputation. But you go to the Lord and you ask Him, you know, to help you through this time, this moment, and help you to stay focused on what is being done at that time. You have to stay so mission and ministry minded in these times. You have to go back to God's word and you have to seek the truth about what you're told to do, especially the discipleship stuff. You know, Satan loves to just crumble it and to tear it down. But you got to go back to Matthew 28 and you got to read what the Great Commission is, you know. And sometimes the best sometimes walking away, that is the best thing that you can do to defend the good work that God is calling you to do, you know. And you have to continue to be consistent because a lot of people are brought into these moments and a lot of eyes are on you in those moments.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you do give up, guess what? The people say, well, they really weren't all about that anyway. Glad that it ended that way. And so you got to maintain the course in what you're doing.
Because you have to remember their goal is to shut you up. And so when you're dealing with a toxic person and you begin to lose sleep at night and you don't know how, you've done all the things you know as a believer of Jesus Christ you need to do and nothing is changing and you feel yourself almost becoming toxic too. You know what I mean? Because you're wanting to control them, get them to stop. What can you do? It gets kind of crazy. You have to remember who you are in the Lord. And Millie Mae, that is why it is so important for you to spend time with Him because they will make you crazy. We experienced it. I mean, we had moments of like, what in the world? And I have to go back and say, Lord, no, you gave us this, Lord. You spoke this to us, Lord. You asked us to do these things. And then you have to also go back and say, Lord, I know that your word is true. Lord, I know Galatians 5 says it is for freedom that Christ has set me free. Stand firm then and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Lord, I know that you set me free. I know that I'm free. I'm not in bondage like they're showing. Lord, I am not dirty like they're saying. Lord, I know that you have spoken these things in my life, and I have to be able to say that. When we are not with the Lord, we're weak. And so when we're hit with a toxic person, they leave us destroyed and we tend to stay destroyed, don't you think, hun? It is hard to pick up the pieces if I didn't already know the goodness of the Lord in my life. If I was not already living out that relationship with Him. I tend to, the person that's not doing that is going to believe everything that the toxic person says that they are.
Yeah, I can't help but to go back and think about Paul in prison. You know, to be put into prison would be so devastating, being away from you, your mom, and just all the good things that we have. You know, and it's like here's Paul in prison and totally isolated, which is what Satan wants to do, and totally off the mission field it seems. And here in prison, Paul is still praising the Lord and leading a jailer to Christ and his entire household. I mean, the dude never stopped, you know, and his ultimate allegiance was to Christ. and that's what ours should be. And no matter where we are, what happens, you know, just like it said in Luke, it said Jesus went on his way, and you maintained that. And so we've prayed not just for opportunities to serve or to disciple others. In the study, it kind of, he goes on and on about in 2 Timothy, you know, show me who those few reliable, faithful people
Yeah,
are.
reliable.
And that's changed our approach to how we want to go into discipling again, you know, and to pray that the Lord will show us who those are so that we can feed into them. But here's another big kicker quote, right? The best way to confound a toxic person while they're trying to take you away from the work that the Lord has you do, the best way to confound them is to maintain the good work that God has called you to do. You don't stop. So we talked about being consistent. You know, we've talked about going to God, and you know, you have to pray for discernment in these times. After you get hit by a toxic person or 5, I mean, the next time you run into a difficult person, you're just going to immediately chalk them up like, here we go again. And you just quickly dispose of them, you know, and you have to pray to the Lord for discernment. You have to pray. I mean, really, the only thing that is going to get you through this, and the only thing that's going to help it, whether difficult or a toxic, and your mom said it, is the Holy Spirit's intervention. I mean, and then you got to leave it at that. You know, you can't sit there and go, like, we invested a year and a half into this couple's life, from one of which was a toxic. A year and a half spent. Like, we didn't know any better. That was pre this study. But a year and a half fed in for what? And we had no effect. And yet we were crushed at the outcome, you know. And so you're just going to give it to the Holy Spirit. And you're going to pray for them. You're going to pray for every person that is affected, because there will be a multitude of people that are affected by this one person. And then you got to, I mean, for me, and that is the fruit of the Spirit and the self-control. I mean, I feel like just naturally Peter grabbed the sword and cut the ear off. You know, the retaliation part is something that you have to pray through, and not to do that. But
Because what is the one thing that makes you angry above all things?
being misunderstood.
To be misunderstood. And when you really think about that, like, as a believer, when you, I am a disciple, and we make disciples, and we want to make disciples, and I want to spend the rest of our life. If we could walk away and do that full time, we would. Like, that is the calling on our life by the Lord, you know. And so when you know that even in the year and a half with this couple, that was pure for us. The love, the preparation, the word, the praying, and all of that, you know. And so the hardest thing is when you know that you are aligned and you are prayed up and you are filled up and you are serving the Lord, to be misunderstood or to be portrayed any other way it is devastating. And that's the goal. Devastation, broken heart, the lack of trust. They want all of those things. And you say, well, how could somebody want that? I mean, how could people kill people? You know what I mean? It is pride. They want what they want when they want it, and it's really all about them. And so that is the part of it, to be misunderstood and to experience that. It is the worst thing ever. But the Lord, and only the Lord, in your isolation and in your total devastation and in your, just loneliness, like, I have nobody else. The Lord is there with you, Millie Mae. And we have lived that out multiple times. And so we don't just say this to you. We have felt it. He has been my only friend. You know, He has been the only one we could talk to or trust at times. And He is so good.
Yeah. and he equips, and I think that is the beautiful thing in all of this, that he has equipped us well, going through some situations, and I mean, and that's the great thing about having a partner that has also gone through it with you. I mean, we basically have a conversation checklist, like, man, this happened with such and such a person, and it's almost like you set up, you kind of play that movie and set it up like, if this person makes that move, then they've just gone from the difficult to the toxic, you know. And
Because remember, we're looking for reliable people. So, Millie Mae, I mean, this is so specific to you because you know our door has been open, and we so wanted, Lord, bring them. You know, keep the door open, and those that want to learn, we want to take them, and there's nothing wrong with that, except there are, sadly, I wish that we could do that, and no one would come in tainted or with another agenda except learning about the Lord and wanting to walk in freedom. But the reality is that that's not always like that, and the Lord, he says it multiple times in his word. He's preparing the disciples and preparing the different churches for these kinds of people, and to be aware of them. Can I bring up something real quick, hon?
Sure.
Okay, well, I have two things to say. So first thing I wanted to say, I wanted this quote from his book real quick, and it says, toxic people will try to make the problem toxic people will try to make the problem about how you've reacted to their toxic behavior rather than them being toxic themselves. Okay? Don't take the bait. And this is kind of how you're going to overcome it, is the Lord begins to show you, like your dad was saying, there's some red flags that happen, and you begin to learn, okay, I'm going to pay attention to that. That was said, if they do this, and that's probably leaning towards how unhealthy they are, and we just kind of pay attention to that. I know that was random, but I just had to get it in there. Okay. I want to read to you because we're talking about sort of how to overcome them a little bit, or how to be aware of the toxic people. Colossians 3 gives you two different types of people. Okay. And so this is kind of what we want to use as our barrier of like who we are and who they are, and the separation. Let's see. Okay. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived. This is in verse 7, excuse me. But now you must get rid of yourselves all the things like anger. The toxic person is deep down angry. Just hear one of their stories and you'll hear it. I mean, there's people that they have hated. Their list of hate is more than their people of love. Malice. They're slanderers, and their filthy language is on their lips. And so that separates them. You'll see all of those things in them. Maybe not at first, because remember, they're usually great personalities, okay? But over time, these things will begin, okay? Now, listen, that's who they are, okay? But we are... I lost my place. Clothe yourselves with compassion, with humility, with gentleness, with patience, bearing with each other and forgiving one another. Those are all the things in Colossians. That is who we are. And so we have to be sure that we remember those things. The Lord has made me loving. He has made us gentle. These are the things, they're separated. We're not the same. It's not the same playing field, and we don't serve the same God.
And you take all those good things that he's given you, and the love and the compassion, and you feed those into those reliable people. Those are the ones you're praying for, and asking him to bring. He is pretty specific about, there are people you do not feed into, and it kind of goes along with the labeling. You know, he labels people swine. Don't cast your pearls before them. You know, don't give what is holy to the dogs. You know, he is a labeler. Whitewashed tombs. You know, if he's sitting there specifying angry people and slanderers, and you think you can help one of those, you're making a wrong move. I mean, you want to talk about anger. We've had people try to do Master Life that had to shut themselves into a closet while the spouse was yelling and cussing at them through the door. You know, we have people come into a Bible study that as soon as they get in the car, they close those doors. The husband gets yelled at all the way home, you know, right after something good, you know. But
Yeah.
anyway, it is okay to walk away. And the Bible is clear that Jesus hid himself. He withdrew. He left the region and he left them and he went on his way.
And if the Lord walked away from people, I mean, the rich ruler, he loved, like he cared about him, and he didn't want to leave his riches. And the Lord walked away. He didn't force him. That's what I love about this book. They keep reminding us that, like, Jesus is not controlling. Like, you get to choose whether you want to follow him or not. Even if you're a believer, the worldly Christian, they wake up every morning, just like we talked about. They decide who they want to serve. Okay, the Lord doesn't say you will serve me, and this is how it's going to go. Okay, and so that's part of that. He could not get everybody to follow him. So why would we think, Millie Mae, that I can get everybody to change? We can't do it. Okay, the Lord let them choose, and so you have to be open and you have to understand. I cannot force people to be different. But what I can do is I can preserve our ministry and keep moving forward and quit throwing trash. I want you to talk about the pigs because I think, the pearls before swine, you hear it your whole life in Bible study, but I don't think that there's ever really great explanation of what that really means.
Well, I revealed kind of a hang up that I was having at one point, and which I've talked about my drinking in my testimony, in the past. And, one swine, after I mentioned, this is, I'm not getting drunk, but I just go home and have a couple beers. And the swine's like, oh, I'll pray for you. That was the holier than thou pious man that ended up taking that information and going to a church leader and like, this guy shouldn't be leading because he drinks a couple of beers, which that was one example that came up.
So the pearls before swine it's kind of that same thing we were talking about earlier, where they take, you're sharing something like that is, we're all sinners. I mean, so we all have our own set of issues, and where you are sharing, like, that is something you're struggling with, they then exploit it. And so what was shared in confidence and like a way that they need the reality, and like, this is my struggle, they then take it and they taint it and make it worse than it is. And that is the evil. That is what Satan loves. He loves for something. And then, because you know what happens the minute that is exploited, we will shut up. I'm not going to talk to anybody else again. Nope. I trust no one. You know what? Come like time for a prayer request, I'm going to zip it. I'm not going to meet with anybody one-on-one. And if he can get the believers, especially the strong believers, if he can get us to be quiet, then that halt of the gospel just stopped. And it's not happening with us anymore. So, Millie Mae, that's why we're doing these videos, hun.
Yeah. And just kind of like to put the other book into this, here's some quotes that I really want you to hang on. And that it goes back to the first two that we started. You can't, as a Christian, you got to stop worrying about the unhealthy fallout with the unhealthy person when you're challenged by making a healthy decision. All right. And you can't control the toxic person. You can't change a toxic person. You can't understand a toxic, but what you can do is you can guard your mission and maintain your character. You will never know peace by trying to please a toxic person, and then again, I hear your mom's voice claiming this. It rings in my head. It is for freedom that what?
Christ has set me free.
Yep. And
stand firm then.
That is the absolute truth, man. And so those are the things you hold on to. And those are the things that, I really go through this study. It's a 6 weeks, a great 6 weeks. But the Lord, He's amazing. He shows up, and He is not going to leave you alone. He's not going to leave you without work to be done during these times, just like with Paul. I can truly tell you that in the most gut-wrenching, heartbreaking of times, He is there and He is moving in your life. He is working. He is guiding. He is validating you. He is vindicating you. and He is amazing in this. Yeah.
One of the last things I'd like to say is Gary mentioned accept dishonor as praise. You must be doing something right to be shot at. And part of the devastation of the toxic person is the first time it happens, man, it is tough to heal. But the Lord does bring healing. And so the next time you're stronger, and the next time you're stronger, and it said, accept dishonor as praise. Call it what it is. Jesus knew that Judas was not with him. You know what I mean? He called him out. You're gonna kiss the Son of Man or on the cheek or whatever. He called him out. And so we learned to be smarter. We learned to lean on the Lord, and we call it toxic when it's toxic. Okay.
Your granddad was a smart man. I mean, it was like the first time we experienced this as we were leading a life group. I was just kind of sharing it, and he's like, "Well, you must be doing something right." And I just kind of looked at him funny. He's like, "Satan wouldn't be after you if you weren't doing something right," And then as we told the story of what happens, it was 2 words. Gotta go.
Gotta go.
They gotta go.
They gotta go.
You gotta get them out, and that's kind of what this is. When you walk away, in essence, they're going, But sound advice from a wise man.
So we love you, and we are.
It's okay to walk away, Millie.
It's okay to walk away and trust the Lord, and let Him continue to use you.
Yep.
Okay.
See ya.